Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Pastor Shannon for asking me to preach. I have great respect for my senior pastor, and I'm grateful to serve. And it's always a privilege when you stand. This represents the sacred desk with the Word of God, and you stand behind God's Word. It's always a privilege and a responsibility, and not one that anyone should ever take lightly. Dare to be like Daniel. I don't know, maybe they were worshiping just like this in Jerusalem, and they were praising God. Sacrifices have been made. All the familiar surroundings were in place. All the tapestry and all the things that go with worship were there around the temple. But the temple, Jerusalem, became under siege. And there was a great army, the Babylonians, who had come against them. And no doubt about it, there is a great war going on today, right? And in the spiritual realm, and principalities and powers of the air, and things that we can't see, and yet things that we can see are taking place even this moment. And on some day, just as they were worshiping, all of a sudden the worship had to stop, and now things weren't the same. There was an invasion. Tragedies happen. People die. The things we hold dear are attacked. But God is still in control. And ultimately He wins. It's final. There's no question. That's already been settled. Before the earth was created, before time began, before anything, God has never known defeat. God has never been up against it. He's never been taken off guard. There's never been any concern that someone was going to trick Him. And since we know this, we can dare to be like Daniel's. Now that's easy to say, but what's going on in your life? You know, virtual reality, you put those things on your eyes, and I've never done it, but you see things, and you'll see people making motions like they're dodging something, but there's not. It's because of what they're seeing, and they're imagining, and they're reacting to something visual. I watch on television tragedy and terrorist attacks, and I've never been involved where a terrorist has attacked me. I've never ran for my life as a big truck was coming down and had to try to grab my child and the child be torn away. I've never experienced that. I don't know how that would feel. I don't know the panic. I don't know the adrenaline. I don't know the mind going into just shock. My body feels okay right now. I don't have noise and screams and people yelling all around me. But someday I might. Dare to be like Daniel. Cry out to God for help is the first thing in Daniel's life that I see. And I use the word cry out. Not to where there's not emotion, to where there's not, I need you, God. Not, well, God, good to see you today. God, I need you. Cry out to God for help. Way before the lion pit. I've seen lions at the zoo. I've watched them on television, but I've never had one and nothing between me and the lion but a little space. Way before the lion pit, life had given Daniel some major trials. Anybody here have some trials in their life? Anybody here cried out to God today? As a very young man in his teens, Daniel had been chosen for a 500-mile trip. I don't like a 500-mile trip in the car. Along with some other, and I use the word literally, captives. Daniel Get your walking sandals on. Let's go. The Babylonian soldiers ordered him. It's only 500 miles to your new home. Does anybody here like to be told what to do? Raise your hand. When my wife was going over the message, I have in here a few places about, I encourage you to turn to this scripture and read it later. And, well, she just shared with me, maybe you're telling people to do something, at any rate, people don't like to be told what to do. And I don't know, I've gotten used to that. By any standard, in this world, a 500-mile march to a foreign land is difficult. It's hard. You know, sometimes life demands that we respond to a trial. We can't avoid it. I kind of like to avoid things that I can avoid and not necessarily always hit them head on. But that can't be done all the time. Jerusalem had been conquered. I don't know what the future holds for this nation. I pray that it's not that. But God has this nation's future in His hands. Jerusalem had been conquered. Why? Because of sin and going away from God. Daniel was leaving mom and dad and all that he was familiar with. I like familiar things. I like to know where this is and that is, and it just feels good to have a little bit of order. God's holy temple had been overrun by the pagan invading army. Stuff was taken out of the temple. It was going to be used later for worshiping gods of stone, and it was all gone. God, what's happening? I've asked that, you've asked that, and probably there's some here this morning asking that right now. God, what's happening in my life? Nothing's the same anymore. This sinful people have overthrown your dwelling place. God, this isn't supposed to happen. So often we feel good about God when we're trusting Him and everything's going well and it's good for us and we have good health, well, at least relatively good health, and people think well enough of us to where somebody's not chasing us, trying to kill us. I mean, people, we have some respect and things are going along well. But Daniel shines in a foreign territory as a captive after he'd lost it all. Sometimes it seems some things in America are getting a little to where when you were growing up or I was growing up, those of us who are, well, I'm a little over 60, but not, you look back when you were growing up, it was different back then in a lot of ways. Life isn't about having it together, though, when everything's going our way. But how do you deal with it when things aren't going your way? How do you deal with it when they're not working right? What comes to your mind right now? Something in your life that's hit you hard, just bam! You know, we can cry out to God, the psalm says, morning, noon, and night. Nebuchadnezzar had just taken by force everything away from Daniel. What do you have control over? Do you have control over much in your life, really? I mean, think about it. Can't something happen that anything you have in your hand right now could be gone or taken away or no longer there or changed? Daniel would serve a sinful king, and he would serve God too, faithfully. Can we serve God and live among people that don't serve Him? Can we be faithful? We can be, can't we? As a matter of fact, we must be. Daniel also had to forgive the very one who had probably killed and had people that he knew killed, who easily could have him killed, who took his city, who took everything he had. Daniel had to serve him and had to forgive him. But he also had to be faithful to God. And only God can make that possible. and go before us. But we have to have faith to be faithful to God and continue to take the step forward in a situation that can be very trying. You know what? I was going to make a little joke here. I don't know. Maybe I won't. But to further show his dominance, old King Nebuchadnezzar changed Daniel's name. And I can't pronounce his name, so I was going to call him Bill. Belshazzar. Something. Thank you. Bel is a name. I'd spell it, but it's too long. It's not exactly Bill, but his new name gave honor to one of their gods. Daniel was now taken by force to serve a sinful king in a sinful society where sinning was the practice and there wasn't much light to be found anywhere. You ever look around and feel like maybe your light was about the only light right then shining? That you felt encompassed by the darkness? That is, if Daniel lasted the 3 years that it took for the training he was going to be involved in. God, I ask you a question. How can you be in control and all of this be going on? How can you allow this to happen? Now, fast forward to our crazy world today. I didn't even go to my little news app when I heard something because I said, I don't want to really look at it right now. There had just been so many things happen. I said, I just don't want to look at it just yet. I know I'll have to. I know I'll hear it. I know I'll have to try to digest it. But I just don't want to just yet. God, are you sovereign? Are you in control over all of human history, past, present, and future? Daniel cried out to God. It's not so much about getting God's attention. Matter of fact, he never sleeps. He knows all things all the time. It's not getting God's attention. When we pray, it's about giving God our attention. It's about listening requires some focus. Cry out to God. That means my focus, my listening to God is now in tune. I'm aware, God. I'm listening, God. Speak, help, move. I know this was his lifelong habit. Scripture tells me that. I don't know how often Daniel prayed on that long march. I'd have been praying all the time. I don't think I would have been picked because they picked the, smartest and the... Daniel must have been something, and yet, the smartest person in here needs God, amen? The most healthy person in here needs God. The person with everything going their way the most right now, guess what? They need God as much as the one falling apart. Their focus may not be, though, in that direction, but that's reality. He was headed toward an unknown future. Everything in his young life gone, changed forever. Some of you are here this morning and have had your life or the life of a loved one changed, and that life is no longer the same as it was before. Do you know the unchanging one? Have you looked to Him? Have you focused toward Him? Are you listening for His help? So the first thing I know about Dare to be a Daniel is cry out to God. And this can take place anywhere, anytime, and it comes from your heart to His. As a matter of fact, talking to Jesus doesn't, I'm trying to communicate now, and I'm just hoping that everything keeps working. I was talking about the mic. There's a set of natural laws that we come into play with when we communicate with each other. But it doesn't work that way with Jesus. You see, I can look at you and smile and think to myself, ugh. I can look at you and say, oh, are you having a good day? And think to myself, I hope not. But you see, I can cry out to Jesus and never speak a word. I can have hurt that can't be put into words, but Jesus understands that hurt completely. I can communicate and He can communicate with me in ways that I can't even know to explain. But I know that He's spoken to me. I know that I feel strength now. I know that He has enabled my trust, whereas before I couldn't muster up anything to even begin to fake it. But now He has enabled it. And I know God has moved. When I cry out to Jesus for help, He can do in me what nobody else can do. I love it when my mama, I'll call her up and say, "Would you pray for me, Mom?" I'll call her from work and say, "Mom, would you pray for me right now?" She does. I love it when my wife tucks me in at night. Kind of reminds me of my mom. But as much as I love my mom and my wife, and I'll tell you what, I am one lucky guy, amen? Amen. God can do for me what nobody else can do. And oh, how I love Him. And I'm amazed at oh, how He loves me. How He loves you. And He's the one living in your heart right now, if you know Him. Jesus can address the problem in the future when I don't even know how to find the dots, and if I found them, I wouldn't even know how to start to connect them. They took Him away from God's temple. They changed everything in Daniel's life. Daniel's name had been changed to be a part of this brainwashing scheme. Don't you think the devil's trying to brainwash people today? In school, at work, in law, anywhere and everywhere, the devil's trying to brainwash people. You see, Daniel was only a teenager. 15 years of age, most guess. And he was experiencing this trial in his young life. But he had the God who is ever the same, all-powerful and all-knowing, taking care of him. The same one who's taking care of you and me. They tried to erase God, Yahweh, the great I Am, to the I Am Not in Daniel's life. They're trying to erase talking about God anywhere, except private and in the closet. But God will never, never be erased. Matter of fact, it says the fool says in his heart, what? There is no God. But they could not change his heart. God still lived there. How about you and me? Has this modern world, this world that we live in today, has it touched your heart? Has any success been achieved in pushing Jesus off the center of your heart? Has His voice been dimmed by all the clamor and all the noise the world has there? We're so busy, I think there's a reason for that. So that we don't have time to focus and give our attention to God. We have no continuing city, but what? Hebrews says, we seek one to come. But in the meantime, here we are, alive and here on earth. Take this old world and give me Jesus. I won't turn back. I won't turn back. I'm not going to sing for you this morning. Thank you. Daniel 1:8 says, He made up His mind to not defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. And a lot of this food had been offered to idols. And so Daniel had made up his mind. He had set purpose in his heart. How easy is it for you to have your mind changed? A good salesman might come close. There was no one from his Sunday school class to remind Daniel. God has said. Daniel had purposed in his mind. He had lost everything. But is it true you lose everything, but if you have Jesus, you have everything? Someday it may come to us to answer that question. Daniel had cried out to God. His mind was set. Do you cry out to God before you get to work? Find yourself well into your new day without calling on God? I don't know. Boy, when that happens, I say, wait a minute. Have you asked Him for guidance, protection, wisdom, mercy, service opportunities? I don't know what you talk to God about. When you go to work, you may have to wear a certain title or have a job description. Mine's all detailed out. That lays down some rules for your behavior, and I understand that. That's necessary. Some work environments may feel like, well, a foreign land. I don't know. I've heard people have some problems with coworkers and different things. I don't know, sometimes I've heard of family reunions going on. You can have problems at family reunions. Do you trust that God is in control? That He's watching over you? God, I sure prayed before I got up here because it's more comfortable up there in the sound booth. But because of the opportunity in your word, I felt you wanted me to. And so here I am. That Jesus has a purpose for your life. Do you live for Him at work? Do you believe you can trust Him? Oh my. Well, God, I trust you as long as. I don't know, we're human, aren't we? Well, God, it's a little harder to trust you just now. When you have time, read Daniel 1, 8 through 20 for yourself. See how God made a way for Daniel not to defile himself. Matter of fact, just to get ahead of myself, you have time later today, read Daniel 1 through 6. You'll love it. It will bless you. That same God will make a way for you. Cry out to God. Have you concerning what's on your mind? Now, some of us can put out of our mind what we don't want on our mind when what's on our mind is really something that's hit us hard. I have trouble getting things out of my mind. I want them to go out of my mind and they just keep going round and round. But some of us can avoid and ignore things that we ought not to. Something right now that you're dealing with, have you given it to God? Or do we want subtle control? Here, God, but there's no release. Here, God, no wonder it's getting heavy. Has the world gotten to you, changed you somehow? Or have you cried out to God and determined not to defile yourself? It is hard to cry out to God when our world is falling apart. You know, when we've been injured, part of the pain comes from the healing process, doesn't it? The initial injury, we're in shock and we don't feel the pain. The pain starts when the healing starts. And with God and our world falling apart, as He begins to lead us and guide us and say, trust me here, trust me there, move and I'm going to be with you. Take this step forward, pause here. That's when the trust really begins to come into life. And that's sometimes when the pain begins. Cry out to God when your world is falling apart. He knows the way you take. God can make a way when there seems to be no way. That would make a good song, but you know, it's true. And I ask the question, is God making a way for you right now? And if He's not, how about pausing once again and saying, God, I'm doing all I know to do. Help me just now. Cry out to God again and again, morning, noon, and night, throughout the day. I'll never get through crying out to God. God can make a way. Cry out to God. He's as close as your own heart. Matter of fact, that's where He lives. Cry out to God. Dare to be this Daniel. Now, the next one. Give thanks to God. Cry out to God. Give thanks to God. No, not for everything, but when it happens, thank Him for helping you and for who He is. I don't want to ask for things and hit me harder, hit me harder, hit me harder. I lost this, I want to lose more. No. But God, whatever happens, I thank You for Your presence. And I can thank You in anything, even if I'm not saying I asked for that or wanted that to happen. I can thank Him that now that it's happened, He is with me. No matter what it is that has happened, I can thank Him. Matter of fact, Daniel thanked Him throughout his life. And looked what had happened to Daniel at the age of 15. And what he went through in trials is just amazing. But he was thankful daily with God throughout his life. Daniel and 3 friends made the interview cut with King Nebuchadnezzar. 3 years of intense training. And it's not always a blessing to work for the king. No, it's not. Some have to work in very dangerous environments, don't they? Our police, our firefighters, our military, nurses, doctors. Who knows? Just going to work sometimes on the road can be dangerous. Sometimes stepping out in your front yard can be dangerous. Hey, guess what? Living in this world. Please take time to read Daniel chapter 2. And okay, I got that out. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream that disturbed him. Okay, I have some dreams that disturb me. But now, God was giving King Nebuchadnezzar some insight into the future about what was going to happen. I can tell you right now, God knows the future and what's going to take place. And so the king got all of his men together, all the men that were supposed to, and they were being paid, and they were trained, and they were on the inner court, they were advisors, magicians, etc., etc. And he got them together and said, I've had a dream. Daniel wasn't a part of this particular meeting. And he said, I want you to interpret my dream. Okay, king, tell us the dream. You tell me the dream that I had, and then I'll ask you to interpret it after you've told me the dream that I've had correctly. No way any man could do that, they tell the king. And you know what the king did? Well, you're right. No, he became furious. You ever been treated unfairly? He became furious. Hey, king, tell me my dream. No. The king, as a matter of fact, said, kill him. And he gave an order to wipe them all out. Well, the commander of the king's guard came to kill Daniel and his 3 friends. I said the world's a dangerous place. It was for Daniel. Isn't it good to have a regular daily prayer life? God, whatever happens today, I give it to you. Go before me. I think Daniel had already prayed that. Then when your day suddenly falls apart, your cry to God is not the first time that day that you've been in touch. Amen? Have you ever realized something happened and God had prepared you before it happened, and you look back and said, thank you, God, you prepared me, and I had no idea, but I was asking you to go before me? Daniel asked his 3 friends to pray so that they would not be killed. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, pray for God to reveal the secret to them. You know what I've found? Prayer is more effective than panic. Is there an amen there? Now, panic can be cool. No, it's not cool. Panic can be terrifying. But I tell you what, somewhere I read, the will is stronger than the emotions. And with God's help, God can help you. Panic. Pray. They prayed or cried out to God, and God revealed the dream and its meaning to Daniel at night in a vision. Daniel cried out to God. Daniel gave thanks to God. And I just briefly say a little bit of what he said. May the name of God be praised forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to Him. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and establishes kings. And he goes on and he talks about giving wisdom, and he just gives God a real praise and thank you. God is always worthy of our praise and thanksgiving. I've experienced myself a panic attack once or twice. And you know what? Still, I would thank God for being with me. And I knew somehow He was not only going to go through with me, but He was going to stay with me and go with me as I went on. You ever been afraid? God stays with you when you're afraid. Aren't you glad? God is always worthy of our praise and thanksgiving. But for sure, don't you forget to give Him thanks when the answer comes. He's worthy. Give Him thanks. And all of us, myself certainly, need to do that more. Daniel's brought before the king. And right away in Daniel 2:28, he gives God the credit and says, "O king, it's not me, it's God who knows the future." And Daniel tells the king that God has given the king, "Hey king, you're all powerful right now, but God's given that to you. Everything you've got, your power, your strength, and your honor, God's in control. He's given that to you." And Daniel explains the end of the king's kingdom and the rise and fall of several more. God's in control of the rise and fall of nations. And one day the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Daniel talks about that in chapter 7. No one will ever conquer it. It will stand forever. God, not the world leaders, decides the outcome of history. Amen? And that is a fact. God's kingdom is indestructible. Those who trust in God have had their sins forgiven, accept Jesus, and they are a part of the kingdom of God. And I pray that you are this morning. When you can, check out Daniel. I encourage you again. Dare to be a Daniel. Cry out to God throughout the day. Give God thanks throughout the day. And trust God for the outcome. Whoa, throughout the day. Well, God, if you're in control and all-powerful, and I've prayed and I've cried out and I've given you thanks, whoa, I'm going to trust you with the outcome. Daniel 6:10 and 11 is my text. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual. He did this all the time, in his upstairs room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. That means every day he gave thanks to God. The officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. They weren't too impressed. When you can, take time and try to memorize these 3 things. Cry out to God in prayer. Give God thanks and trust Him with the outcome. That is really, dare to be a Daniel, what it's all about. Sometimes when someone or someones become jealous of you, they begin to find fault and look for a way to bring you down. And so they find a way to bring Daniel down. Matter of fact, Daniel's such a good worker. Well, he's only in his 80s. He was responsible, faithful, and honest. And look, as hard as they couldn't find anything to fault him with. Come on now. That's the way it would be at your place of work, right? As people watch you and me. You talk about backstabbers. These guys were out for blood. You know, people can be cruel and mean and hard-hearted and vicious, because even Daniel's enemies knew he was faithful to who? His God. They came up with a sneaky plan to outlaw Daniel's faithfulness to God. And so they lied to the boss, the king. Maybe somebody here has had somebody lie to the boss about them. They even told the king Daniel was in on wanting this law to be passed to honor the king. All your administrators and princes, they said, Of course, Daniel, as one of the three administrators appointed by the King Darius, he'd never agreed to a law that interfered with his worship of God. Is that our stance? Here's the law. For the next 30 days, anyone who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to your majesty the king, will be thrown to the lions. Well, Daniel knew the law. The king signed it. And he must have been flattered in his ego. I mean, I'm happy when somebody says hello to me. Here they're going to honor him 30 days and pray to no one but him. Verse 13 in chapter 6 of Daniel. You know what? That man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, he's not even fit to be an administrator. He's just an old captive from Judah. Is paying no attention to you, O king, or your law. A lot of spite there. But you know, we must obey God. What did the disciples say in front of that group of leaders? We must obey God rather than man. I don't know. I guess that's still true. He still prays to his God. Not once, but 3 times a day. Morning, noon, and night. The king knew now he'd been tricked. He went from a self-styled God to a fool in one day. I tell you, pride will do what? It goes before a fall. And it's true for everybody. You let pride rise up, and pride goes before a fall. It will trip you up. Try as he may to save Daniel, there was no way around the misguided law. You know, once you've said something, maybe we've not made law of it, but once you've said something, it's out there, isn't it? King Darius had planned on appointing Daniel over the entire empire because of Daniel's great ability and his trustworthiness. He was going to use Daniel. And now, because of his own pride, he wasn't going to have a chance to use Daniel. He was going to have him killed. So he had to have him thrown in the lion pit. And plus, he just learned that his other 2 administrators weren't so faithful. They had just played him for a fool. Not everybody that acts all agreeable around the boss is for the boss. Daniel 6:16, the king said to Daniel, may your God whom you worship what? Continually rescue you. No one else could. Daniel stood alone. Only God could save him. And how did Daniel respond as they walked him to the lion pit? And you know, in my mind, I just see the lion pit had been opened, the lions were starving, they were angry, and they were anticipating food. And as their roars cried out like Satan, the roaring lion in God's Word, they were ready to tear apart and feast on old Daniel. The lion pit having been uncovered, that smell, that stink of odor of death reeking out, Satan must have been watching. Daniel, I'm sure, was crying out to God on his way. I know I would have been to that lion's pit. He wasn't in his upper room, but I can tell you he was praying. It's the condition of the heart that we commune with Jesus at any time. And they dropped him in, and so I believe the roaring of the lions stopped. And once that seal was put back on the pit and it was covered, there was no screams of death like lions tearing somebody apart. There was silence, I think. Silence filled the evening air. I would say this about this time. Daniel had started giving God thanks. And I don't believe it was silent in heaven. They'd already sent an angel. He had cried out to God, gave God thanks, and trusted God with the outcome. And so the king came back and he asked, Daniel, are you alive? Did your God save you? And he said, yes, he did. And then the king announced who God was. And of course, the lions were hungry because they threw the accusers in and they were killed before they even reached the bottom. God sends His angels even to take care of us when we need it. But not everybody is saved all the time. There were Christians in Rome that were thrown to the lions, and what happened? they were eaten. Only God knows the reasons why some are saved and some aren't. But they got Daniel out of the pit, and the king realized that Daniel's God was a true God. And I'll ask Pastor Matt if you'd come up. And the king said, I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he will endure forever. This is what our life is to be a testimony and a witness for, is so that people will see us living the life that God has called us to live, even in trials. And then there will be those that realize, as God is speaking to their hearts through conviction, that yes, God, you are real. And some of us will have to forgive somebody who maybe has hurt us, like the king took everything from Daniel, yet Daniel forgave him and was faithful and served God and served the king. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He's rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. And I ask you this morning to trust God, to have Him in your heart, and to cry out to God, give God thanks, and what? Trust Him with the outcome.